The Death Riders MC thought they'd found an easy target when they surrounded the lone semi-truck on the dark, isolated highway. What they didn't know was that inside the cab were two combat-trained K9s with a history of special operations. The moment they moved to attack, they made the deadliest mistake of their criminal lives. In seconds, predators would become prey. The mountain pass between Colorado and Wyoming has always been a desolate stretch of highway. But tonight, it's about to become a battlefield. The Death Riders Motorcycle Club just made their biggest mistake, targeting Jack Harmon's 18-wheeler as it winds through the isolated Blackthorn Pass after midnight. What looks like an ordinary trucker hauling auto parts to Cheyenne is actually a former Army Ranger K9 handler with 4 combat tours in Afghanistan's deadliest valleys. And those 2 German shepherds resting quietly in his sleeper cab? They're not pets. They're Kaiser and Storm, military working dogs with 15 confirmed enemy combatant takedowns and 7 Bronze Stars between them. Marcus Viper Reynolds, the Death Riders' head enforcer, has spent weeks perfecting their highway toll collection operation. Remote location, no cell service, perfect choke point for isolating truckers who wouldn't risk damaging their rigs. By refusing to stop, what Viper failed to notice was the distinctive K9 Ranger unit tattoo on Jack's forearm when he'd surveilled him at the last rest stop, or the way his dogs maintained perfect discipline even while appearing to sleep. The moonlight casts long shadows across the highway as Jack's truck climbs the steep grade. His experienced hands grip the wheel loosely, but his eyes constantly scan the road ahead and behind. In the darkened sleeper cab, Kaiser's ears suddenly prick forward, detecting the distinctive rumble of motorcycle engines, still minutes away from human hearing. "I hear them too, boy," Jack murmurs, eyes never leaving the mirrors. 3 tours in the Korengal Valley had taught him to trust his dog's senses more than his own. "How many, you think?" Kaiser shifts slightly, moving to the small gap in the privacy curtain. The dog's muscular body shows no tension that casual observers would notice, but Jack recognizes the subtle change in posture. Kaiser has shifted to surveillance mode, something he'd done hundreds of times outside forward. Operating bases. The first motorcycle appears in Jack's mirrors, headlight cutting through the darkness. Then another and another, 6 bikes forming a staggered pattern behind his truck. Not random riders, but a coordinated formation. Storm rises silently, in the sleeper cab, taking position near the passenger window without command. The second German shepherd's scarred muzzle, courtesy of an insurgent's knife during a night raid gone wrong, twitches slightly as he scents the air through the cracked window. His body language communicates everything Jack needs to know: multiple approaches, coordinated movement, potential threat. "Just like old times, eh, boys?" Jack's voice remains calm as the first motorcycle accelerates alongside his truck. The rider gestures toward an approaching turnout, the universal signal to pull over. 2 more bikes appear ahead, slowing deliberately, creating a rolling roadblock. Jack's mind calculates options with combat-honed efficiency. The narrow mountain pass offers limited maneuverability for his 18-wheeler. The bikers have chosen their ambush point with tactical precision. Steep drop-off to the right, rock wall to the left, no way to push through without risking catastrophic damage. Kaiser and Storm maintain perfect silence in the darkened cab, their military training evident in how they observe without reaction. These aren't ordinary dogs, barking at approaching strangers. They're combat veterans assessing threats, awaiting commands from their handler. "Deployment positions," Jack says, quietly. Both dogs immediately shift to predetermined locations within the cab. Kaiser behind the driver's seat, Storm on the passenger side, both with clear access to doors. The simple command activates years of specialized training without revealing their capabilities to watching eyes. As Jack reluctantly guides his truck toward the turnout, the bikers begin to encircle him. 3 in front, 3 behind, and now 2 more appearing from the darkness ahead. 8 riders total, wearing the distinctive skull and cross pistols patches of the Death Riders MC. Viper pulls alongside, grinning through his helmet visor as he makes a cutthroat gesture before pointing to the turnout. The message is clear: stop or face consequences. In the darkened cab, Kaiser and Storm remain invisible to the watching bikers, their disciplined stillness masking combat-hardened alertness. 3 years after leaving the battlefield, their training remains razor-sharp, their bond with their handler unbroken. "Stand by, boys," Jack whispers as he slows the truck. "We've got company." The Death Riders have successfully stopped 23 trucks in the past month, collecting thousands in road taxes from drivers who couldn't risk damage to their rigs or themselves. Tonight, they're about to learn why military working dogs are considered among the most lethal assets in special operations, and why you should always check what's inside a trucker's cab before surrounding it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun had barely crested the Colorado mountains when Jack Harmon began his daily routine with Kaiser and Storm. The remote truck stop offered the privacy he preferred for their training exercises, rigorous regimens disguised as simple play to any watching eyes. Kaiser worked the perimeter of the parking area, his powerful body moving with fluid precision as he traced a perfect surveillance pattern. Storm executed scent detection drills, discriminating between dozens of odors with 99.8% accuracy, the same skills that had once located IEDs and weapons caches in mud-walled compounds halfway around the world. "Good boy," Jack murmured as Kaiser returned, the German shepherd's focused eyes never leaving his handler's face. The dog's left ear bore a jagged notch, a reminder of the ambush near Kandahar that had nearly taken both their lives. Jack's hand unconsciously touched the scar tissue around his own shoulder, where 3 rounds had torn through muscle and bone during that same firefight. Kaiser had dragged him to safety, then returned to defend their position until QRF arrived. Actions that earned the dog a commendation Jack kept folded in his wallet alongside his discharge papers. 3 years civilian and you boys still run. "Perfect patterns," Jack said, scratching Storm's scarred muzzle. The second German shepherd had saved 4 rangers during a night raid gone wrong, taking a knife wound that would have killed a lesser dog. Together, the 3 of them had survived firefights, ambushes, and the long, lonely transition back to civilian life. Jack's eyes scanned the parking lot, noting the battered pickup truck whose occupants had been watching him for the past 20 minutes. The Death Riders often used scouts before their main force appeared. His ranger training catalogued details automatically. 2 men, multiple tattoos, carefully positioned for optimal observation while appearing casual. "You see them too, huh?" Jack said quietly, as Kaiser's ears pivoted toward the truck without. Turning his head, a surveillance technique perfected during hundreds of combat patrols. The truck's radio crackled with road updates as Jack loaded Kaiser and Storm back into the cab. Most truckers avoided Blackthorn Pass at night due to its treacherous curves, but Jack had chosen this route deliberately. After Afghanistan crowded highways and populated truck stops triggered his PTSD. Remote routes kept the nightmares manageable. His psychiatrist had called it avoidance behavior, but Jack considered it tactical adaptation. Heard the Death Riders have been hitting truckers. On Blackthorn, a heavy-set driver commented as Jack refueled. "A highway robbery, they're calling it, demanding road taxes from anyone passing through after dark." Jack nodded non-committally, but his mind shifted to tactical assessment. The Death Riders had established a pattern, isolating targets, overwhelming them with superior numbers, creating no-win scenarios that forced compliance. "You carrying anything worth taking?" the driver continued. "Just auto parts," Jack responded, his voice neutral. His cargo manifest listed conventional shipments, not the specialized equipment concealed beneath, dual-purpose gear that served his civilian cover while maintaining combat readiness. Inside the cab, Kaiser and Storm remained perfectly positioned, watching the parking lot through tinted windows. To casual observers, they appeared as ordinary pets accompanying their owner. None would recognize the tens of thousands of hours of specialized training that had transformed them into what Jack's commanding officer had once called the most effective K9 team in theater. The memory surfaced without warning. Korangal Valley, 2019. Their unit pinned down by insurgent fire from 3 directions, Kaiser leading them through a hidden drainage culvert to flank the enemy position, Storm detecting the ambush team before it could engage. The dogs had operated with such precision that the battalion commander had requested them specifically for high-risk operations afterward. "Your boys still got that military bearing," a voice observed, snapping Jack back to the present. A retired Marine stood nearby, recognizing what others missed. "German Shepherds, dual-purpose teams, right? I worked with K9 units near Helmand." Jack nodded, genuine respect replacing his usual reserve. 75th Ranger Regiment, K9 Tactical Unit. "Kaiser and Storm, 4 deployments." The Marine whistled softly. "Those are high-speed dogs, brother. Saved my ass more than once having K9s with our patrols." He glanced toward the highway. "Be careful up there tonight. Those Death Riders aren't just collecting cash anymore. Last trucker who resisted got hospitalized." Jack's expression revealed nothing, but internally his assessment shifted. Not simple highway robbery, escalating violence, coordinated tactics, established territory, just like the insurgent groups they'd tracked through mountain passes. In Afghanistan, Kaiser pressed against Jack's leg, sensing the subtle change in his handler's demeanor. The dog's battle-scarred body communicated everything words couldn't. "Ready when you are." As the 18-wheeler pulled back onto the highway, Jack checked his specialized equipment concealed throughout the cab, preparations made out of habit from years in combat zones. Kaiser and Storm settled into their travel positions. But their posture remained alert, sensing the approaching mission through the changed energy of their handler. The mountain pass waited ahead, its winding roads disappearing into gathering darkness. Jack's truck rumbled toward it, carrying cargo the Death Riders would never anticipate. 2 of the most lethal military working dogs ever deployed in combat operations, and a handler who had never truly left the battlefield behind. Some warriors never stop fighting, they just find different wars. Twilight settled over Blackthorn Pass as Jack's 18-wheeler climbed the steep grade. The first stars appeared overhead, pinpricks of light in a darkening sky that reminded him of nights in the Hindu Kush. Kaiser's sudden shift in position pulled Jack from the memory. The German Shepherd had moved to alert posture, ears forward, body tense but controlled. Storm mirrored the behavior from the sleeper cab, both dogs detecting something beyond human perception. "What you got, boys?" Jack asked quietly, eyes scanning the road ahead and his mirrors. The answer came moments later, a lone motorcycle appearing around a bend behind him, headlight cutting through the gathering darkness. The rider maintained precise distance, not approaching but not falling back either. Surveillance technique. Jack catalogued mentally, assessing target, confirming identity. Kaiser moved silently to the passenger window, his muscular body showing no outward signs of tension that casual observers would notice. But Jack recognized the subtle changes, the slight shift in weight distribution, the controlled breathing pattern, the focused attention, combat readiness disguised as casual curiosity. The CB radio crackled to life, breaking the silence. "Northbound 18-wheeler approaching marker 117. You got your ears on." The voice carried artificial casualness, someone establishing contact while gathering information. Jack's tactical assessment continued as he responded. "You got the auto parts truck. Go ahead. Just giving you a friendly heads-up, driver. Toll collection point ahead. Standard rates 500 cash for safe passage. Small price for guaranteed security through the pass." A second motorcycle appeared in Jack's mirrors, then a third. The pattern was familiar from convoy operations. Lead scout, followed by main element moving into flanking positions. In the sleeper compartment, Storm had shifted to provide coverage of the rear approaches, the dogs naturally dividing responsibility zones as they'd done on hundreds of combat patrols. "What happens if my wallet's running light tonight?" Jack asked, his tone conversational, while his mind calculated distances, positions, and response options. The radio chuckled, a sound without humor. "Let's just say the alternative toll gets paid in different currency. Much less pleasant for everyone involved." Around a sharp bend, Jack spotted the ambush position, a widened shoulder where two motorcycles already waited, their riders standing casually beside them. As his truck approached, they mounted up, the choreography too precise to be coincidental. The trap was closing, forces converging from front and rear. "Last chance to be reasonable," the radio voice continued. "Pull over at the wide shoulder at marker 119. Count out 500 and you'll be on your way without complications." Jack maintained his speed, neither accelerating nor slowing, giving nothing away in his driving pattern that would alert the bikers to his combat experience or tactical awareness. Kaiser and Storm remained perfectly disciplined, their military training evident in how they monitored different sectors without command. "Copy that," Jack responded, voice neutral. "Approaching marker 119 now." The turnout appeared ahead, a flat area barely large enough for his truck, bordered by steep rock on one side and a guardrail protecting a 100-foot drop on the other. Jack noted the tactical considerations automatically: limited maneuverability, constricted space, controlled access points. The bikers had chosen their ambush site with expertise that suggested military or law enforcement background. As Jack guided his truck into the turnout, the full force of the Death Riders came into view, 8 motorcycles total, arranging themselves in a practiced containment pattern around the 18-wheeler. Their riders dismounted with coordinated precision, moving to predetermined positions that established complete coverage of the truck. "Deployment positions," Jack whispered. Kaiser and Storm instantly shifted to their designated tactical locations. Within the cab, invisible to watching eyes, but perfectly positioned to respond to threats from any direction. A tall figure approached the driver's side, his leather cut displaying the Death Rider's colors and a sergeant-at-arms patch. His face carried the hardened look of someone accustomed to violence, calculating eyes, scarred knuckles, practiced stance. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. Jack lowered his window partially, enough to communicate but maintaining tactical advantage. "Little late for a way station, isn't it?" "Funny guy," the biker responded without smiling. "I'm Viper. This is Death Rider's territory, and you're using our road. 500 cash buys you safe passage." Jack's eyes tracked the other bikers spreading around his truck, noting their positions, probable weapons, movement patterns. His ranger training assessed angles, distances, response times, calculations made automatically after years in combat. "Zones. And if I don't have that kind of cash?" Jack asked, maintaining eye contact with Viper while peripherally monitoring the others. "Then we start determining what else might cover the toll," Viper replied, his hand moving to rest on the large hunting knife visible on his belt. "Cargo inspection fee becomes necessary. Might find something worth the trouble." Inside the darkened cab, Kaiser and Storm maintained perfect silence, their disciplined stillness masking combat-hardened readiness. The dogs' specialized training allowed them to remain completely motionless while assessing threats, a capability developed for night raids in hostile territory. "1 minute to decide," Viper announced, stepping back slightly. "Either the money comes out or you do." Around the truck, the other Death Riders moved into tighter containment positions, their coordinated movements revealing a practiced protocol. Jack recognized the pattern. They'd done this before, multiple times, refining their approach with each successful toll collection. What they couldn't possibly know was that they had just surrounded the deadliest K9 tactical team ever deployed in the Korangal Valley, and that the real threat wasn't outside the truck. It was waiting silently inside. Jack's mind worked with combat-honed precision, analyzing options and calculating risks. 3 years since Afghanistan hadn't dulled his tactical thinking, only redirected it. The Death Riders had chosen their ambush location perfectly. Steep drop to his right, rock wall to his left, bikers controlling both the front and rear approaches. 8 men total, spread in standard containment pattern around his 18-wheeler. Kaiser, active surveillance. Storm, defensive posture, Jack whispered, triggering the specialized command protocols developed during countless night operations. Both dogs immediately shifted position, Kaiser moving to monitor the driver's side approaches, while Storm covered the passenger side, their bodies remaining invisible to the bikers outside. The cab's interior had been subtly modified for exactly this scenario. Specialized compartments, concealed equipment beneath innocent-looking storage, quick-release mechanisms for doors, reinforced entry points that appeared standard to casual observation. Jack had installed these features methodically after discharge, habits from forward operating bases transferred to his civilian life. "I count 8 tangos, standard perimeter formation," Jack murmured to Kaiser, using the same quiet briefing tone he'd employed before high-risk missions. 2 carrying visible blades, rest lightly concealed, primary aggressor approaching driver's side. Through his side mirror, Jack observed 3 bikers moving to the trailer, their coordinated positioning suggesting they were preparing to breach the cargo doors. The remaining 4 maintained perimeter security, positioned to prevent escape or intervention. Viper approached the cab again, his stance projecting practiced intimidation. "Time's up, driver. Decision time." Jack reached slowly toward his center console, a movement carefully calculated to appear as someone retrieving a wallet. Instead, his fingers activated the hidden switch that armed the truck's specialized defense measures, modifications that would have raised serious questions during standard inspections, but had passed unnoticed beneath the vehicle's legitimate systems. "Just looking for my cash," Jack replied, voice measured. "No need for this to get complicated." The memory surfaced without warning. Korangal Valley, 2018. Their patrol ambushed in a narrow mountain pass, surrounded by insurgents in elevated positions. Kaiser had detected the trap seconds before it closed, giving them just enough warning to establish defensive position. What had followed was 18 hours of sustained combat before extraction forces could reach them. This situation carried eerie parallels: isolated location, superior numbers, coordinated containment. But unlike Afghanistan, these adversaries weren't expecting serious resistance from what appeared to be a standard long-haul trucker. Jack's cell phone showed no service bars, either the remote location or deliberate jamming. No calling for backup. The tactical reality crystallized. He was on his own, just as he'd been during countless operations behind enemy lines. His only allies were the 2 German shepherds, whose combat capabilities remained his most closely guarded advantage. "Getting impatient out here," Viper called, his tone hardening as 2 bikers approached the passenger door. "Either open up or we open it for you." Jack noticed Kaiser's subtle shift. The dog had detected a threat change without any visible reaction that would alert those watching. Storm had moved to counter position, both dogs instinctively establishing tactical coverage of the cab's vulnerable points. "Preparing for possible breach," Jack whispered, another habit from combat, verbalizing tactical assessments to his K9 partners even when unnecessary. The dog's specialized training allowed them to read his body language and scent indicators, understanding the situation through thousands of hours of operational experience. Through his mirrors, Jack observed the methodical deployment of the Death Riders. 2 men now positioned at each side of the cab, 1 at the trailer doors, and 3 maintaining perimeter security. The pattern was familiar. Textbook small unit tactics for vehicle containment, suggesting former military experience among their leadership. "Final chance," Viper announced. "Open the door, or things get unpleasant." Jack's response was to activate the second security protocol, a system that locked the cab's doors with reinforced mechanisms far stronger than standard truck equipment. The subtle click was inaudible outside, but represented a significant escalation in the tactical situation. He was now committed to confrontation. Kaiser and Storm recognized the sound, their bodies tensing in perfect synchronization as they shifted to combat readiness without obvious visual indicators. Their breathing patterns changed subtly, their musculature primed for explosive action if necessary. Jack's hand moved to the concealed compartment beneath his seat, retrieving the specialized equipment he'd hoped never to need in civilian life. Not weapons, those would create legal complications he preferred to avoid, but tactical gear designed for high-risk extraction scenarios. "They'll breach in approximately 30 seconds, he told the dogs quietly. Another operational habit from their deployment days. Defensive protocols only. Contain, don't eliminate. Through the windshield, Jack watched Viper signal to his men. Two bikers retrieved tools from their saddlebags, heavy metal objects designed for forcing entry. The coordinated movement confirmed Jack's assessment. This wasn't simple highway robbery. The Death Riders were conducting a practiced operation with specific protocols. What they couldn't possibly understand was that they were about to confront a handler and two military working dogs with over 200 combat missions between them. Jack had spent years training Kaiser and Storm to operate in exactly these scenarios, outnumbered, surrounded, with civilians potentially in proximity. As Viper gave the signal to approach, Jack whispered the final command phrase that would shift his dogs from passive surveillance to active defense posture, condition black. Kaiser and Storm's responses were imperceptible to anyone without specialized training. A subtle weight shift, a controlled breathing adjustment, pupils dilating slightly. The transformation happened internally, invisible to outside observers, but devastating in its potential. The Death Riders were about to discover the fundamental truth about military working dogs that insurgents in Afghanistan had learned at terrible cost. What looks like an ordinary German shepherd can become the deadliest weapon on the battlefield in a matter of seconds. The first attempt to breach came precisely as Jack had anticipated. Two Death Riders approached the passenger door, pry bar in hand, while Viper maintained position at the driver's side. The remaining bikers established containment, their coordination suggesting this wasn't their first forced entry. Last chance. "To make this easy," Viper called, tapping Jack's window with a gloved knuckle. "Door opens one way or another." Jack's expression remained neutral, giving nothing away as he assessed distances and positions through his mirrors. Kaiser and Storm maintained perfect stillness in the darkened cab, their specialized training allowing them to remain completely motionless despite their combat readiness. To the bikers outside, the truck appeared to contain just one unassuming driver. "I've only got about 200 cash," Jack responded, voice calibrated to project appropriate concern without revealing his tactical awareness. "Business has been slow." Viper's laugh carried no humor. "Then I guess we're doing a cargo inspection, full service treatment. Might find something worth the difference." He signaled to his men, and the tactical situation escalated immediately. One biker swung the pry bar against the passenger window, not to break it yet, but as a demonstration of intent. Another began manipulating the door handle, testing for vulnerabilities. Inside, Storm's muscles bunched imperceptibly, combat training keeping him motionless despite the imminent threat. Kaiser remained equally disciplined at Jack's side, both dogs waiting for specific command sequences developed during house clearing. "Operations in Afghanistan. Think carefully about your next move," Jack warned, his tone shifting subtly to what his ranger unit had called his combat voice, the calm, measured delivery that preceded violent action. "You don't want to open this door." "Actually, I really do," Viper countered, misinterpreting the warning as simple trucker bravado. He nodded to his men. "Show him we're serious." The pry bar struck the passenger window with increased force, creating a spiderweb of cracks, but not yet breaking through. The calculated escalation revealed experience with intimidation tactics, demonstrating capability while still allowing the victim opportunity to comply. Jack activated his truck's external lighting system, instantly illuminating the entire turnout area with military-grade brightness. The sudden illumination disrupted the biker's night vision, creating momentary disorientation, a tactical advantage Jack had employed numerous times during night operations. What the hell? 1. Biker raised his arm to shield his eyes, the pry bar momentarily forgotten. "Kill those lights," Viper demanded, squinting against the sudden brightness. Jack used the distraction to assess each biker's position with combat precision. Their formation had loosened slightly, tactical discipline compromised by the unexpected light. Through the cab's specialized mirrors, he confirmed what Kaiser had already detected through scent. 3 of the 8 bikers carried concealed firearms, identified by the distinctive way they adjusted their stance when momentarily blinded. "I'm giving you one warning," Jack stated, his voice now carrying the unmistakable authority of combat command. "Return to your bikes and ride away. This doesn't need to escalate." Viper's expression darkened, professional pride wounded by the unexpected resistance. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, driver. The Death Riders own this pass." "That's where you're wrong," Jack replied, his hand moving to the specialized control panel concealed beneath his standard dashboard. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." The pry bar struck the passenger window again, this time with enough force to create entry breach imminent. Jack's tactical options narrowed. The Death Riders were fully committed to forced entry, their body language showing escalation to potential violence. "Kaiser, Storm, alert status," he commanded quietly, using their operational language developed through hundreds of combat missions. Both German Shepherds responded instantly, shifting from complete stillness to combat readiness without leaving their concealed positions. Their specialized training allowed them to prepare for engagement while remaining invisible to threats outside, a capability that had saved Jack's life multiple times in ambush situations. "Last chance," Jack announced loud enough for all the bikers to hear. "Walk away now." Viper's response was to pull a heavy flashlight from his belt, clearly intending to break the driver's window. "I don't think you understand how this works. Nobody refuses the Death Riders." As Viper drew back the flashlight, Jack pressed the concealed button that activated his truck's secondary defense system, not weapons, but specialized deterrents developed for riot control situations. A piercing sound emitted from hidden speakers, the frequency calibrated to cause discomfort without permanent damage. The same technology used by military units for crowd dispersal. The bikers recoiled instinctively, hands moving to cover their ears. Their coordinated formation collapsed as individual pain responses overrode tactical discipline. "What the fuck is that?" one shouted, staggering backward from the truck. Jack used the momentary confusion to implement the next phase of his defensive protocol. Kaiser and Storm shifted to their final pre-engagement positions, each dog covering critical approach vectors while remaining undetected by the disoriented bikers outside. Viper recovered first, his face contorted with rage as he raised the heavy flashlight. "Break it open!" he ordered, smashing it against Jack's window with enough force to create the first fracture lines in the reinforced glass. The tactical situation had reached critical threshold. De-escalation was no longer viable. Containment breach was imminent. Jack gave the command that would forever change the Death Riders' understanding of highway vulnerability. "Kaiser, Storm, display." Both German Shepherds instantly rose into full visibility, their powerful bodies suddenly appearing in the windows, teeth bared in controlled aggression displays that had once made insurgent fighters flee rather than approach their patrol. The transformation from invisible presence to combat-ready military working dogs was so sudden, so complete, that even Viper stepped back involuntarily. "What the hell?" he breathed, the flashlight momentarily forgotten in his hand. The Death Riders had surrounded a truck expecting to find one vulnerable driver. Instead, they'd just discovered they were facing a Ranger K9 handler and two of the most lethal military working dogs ever deployed in combat operations. And the night was just beginning. The momentary advantage gained by Kaiser and Storm's sudden appearance began to fade as Viper recovered his composure. His eyes narrowed, tactical assessment shifting as he processed the new threat variables. Dogs? He laughed, the sound harsh in the mountain night. "That's your big play?" He turned to his men. "Looks like our driver brought his pets along for protection." The Death Riders regrouped, their formation tightening as they adjusted to this unexpected development. Three moved closer to the cab, assessing the German shepherds with dismissive glances that revealed their fundamental mistake. They saw dogs, not the combat-hardened K9 operators that had once cleared Taliban compounds ahead of special forces. Or teams. Jack watched their approach through the tactical lens of a ranger who'd survived multiple ambushes. The brief hesitation in their movement told him they were recalculating but not retreating. The situation was escalating toward inevitable confrontation. "Last mistake those dogs are gonna make is getting between us and that cargo," one biker called out, brandishing a chain wrapped around his fist. "Dogs can bleed just like people." Something cold settled in Jack's eyes, the same expression his unit had recognized as the precursor to lethal efficiency in combat zones. Threats against Kaiser and Storm had crossed a line that transformed this from tactical standoff to personal. "Kaiser, Storm, defensive posture Alpha," Jack commanded quietly. Both German shepherds responded instantly, their display shifting from general deterrence to specific threat engagement. Their bodies lowered slightly, muscles coiled with controlled power, teeth exposed in precisely calculated aggression, displays developed by military trainers for maximum psychological impact. Viper signaled to two of his men, who began moving around to the passenger side, clearly intending to flank the truck. "Last chance to pay the toll," he announced, pulling something from his back pocket that reflected the truck's lights. Brass. Knuckles slipped onto his right hand. "Otherwise, this gets ugly for you and your mutts." Inside the cab, Jack activated the final preparatory sequence on his specialized control panel. The truck's systems had been modified with equipment that would be difficult to explain to civilian authorities, but had proven invaluable during convoy protection operations overseas. "You're making a crucial error in judgment," Jack stated, his voice carrying the absolute certainty of someone who'd assessed combat odds accurately hundreds of times before. "Walk away now." A memory flashed through his mind. Korangal Valley, 2019. Their patrol pinned down by insurgents in elevated positions, Kaiser detecting the flanking team attempting to circle behind them. Storm holding position at a crucial choke point while Jack and two other rangers established counter-ambush. The dogs had saved the entire unit that day. Viper's response was to slam the brass knuckles against Jack's window again, the reinforced glass finally beginning to give way. "Break this fucking truck open," he ordered his men. "Take the dogs out first." Jack watched through his mirrors as two bikers approached the passenger door, one now carrying a tire iron. Another had positioned himself on the running board, trying to peer into the cab to locate the dogs. The tactical situation had reached the point of no return. Breach was imminent on multiple vectors. "Storm, position 1, Jack commanded. The German shepherd instantly moved to counter the most immediate threat, the biker on the running board, without exposing himself to the weapon. Kaiser maintained coverage of the driver's side approaches, his body tense with combat readiness. The radio suddenly crackled with static, then a voice cut through. "Death Riders, this is State Patrol. We have reports of highway obstruction at Marker 119. Respond." The bikers exchanged glances, momentary uncertainty disrupting their tactical cohesion. Viper grabbed a handheld radio from his belt. "Nothing to report at 119. Clear channel." "Negative. We have satellite confirmation of multiple vehicles at marker 119. Units responding." Jack recognized the deception immediately. There was no Satellite surveillance of this remote stretch, no state patrol units close enough to have identified their position. Someone was attempting to bluff the Death Riders into retreating. Viper wasn't fooled either. His eyes hardened as he switched off the radio. "They're at least 30 minutes out. More than enough time." He turned to his men. "Finish this now. Get that door open." The first direct attempt to breach came as one biker slammed the tire iron against the passenger window with full force. The specialized glass finally shattered inward. The moment Storm had been waiting for. What happened? Next demonstrated why military working dogs were considered among the most effective close-quarter combat assets in special operations. Storm's powerful body launched through the broken window with explosive precision, targeting the biker with the tire iron. The German Shepherd's attack was not the indiscriminate lunge of an aggressive pet, but the calculated takedown of a combat-trained K9 operator. The biker went down hard, his scream cut short as Storm executed a perfect controlled hold, not mauling, but immobilizing with tactical precision that rendered him instantly defenseless. "Jesus Christ!" another biker shouted, stumbling backward. As he witnessed the clinical efficiency of Storm's attack, Kaiser remained in position, covering Jack's side of the cab, combat discipline maintaining tactical distribution of their defensive capabilities. Viper's face contorted with rage and disbelief. "What the fuck kind of dogs are these?" "The kind you should have checked for before surrounding my truck," Jack replied, his hand moving to the door release. The time for passive defense had ended. The Death Riders had made a fundamental error in their tactical assessment, mistaking a military K9 unit for civilian pets. Now they were about to discover the full extent of their miscalculation as Jack prepared to engage. The night air filled with the sound of approaching motorcycles as additional Death Riders responded to Viper's distress call. The situation was escalating beyond simple highway robbery into something far more dangerous. Jack keyed his hidden radio, the same equipment he'd used during countless operations in Afghanistan. Condition red. I say again, condition red. The battle for Blackthorn Pass was about to begin in earnest. The night erupted into controlled chaos as Jack executed the tactical response he'd rehearsed countless times since leaving Afghanistan. His door swung open with precision timing, creating the momentary distraction that allowed Kaiser to launch. From the cab, 85 pounds of combat-trained German Shepherd moving with explosive power toward Viper. The Death Rider's leader raised his arm instinctively, but Kaiser had taken down Taliban fighters who expected the attack. His technique was flawless, targeting the weapon arm first, his specialized bite designed not to maim, but to disable with controlled pressure that forced Viper to the ground with a shout of pain and shock. "Stand down," Jack commanded, his voice carrying the absolute authority that had once directed Ranger operations in hostile territory. He emerged from the cab in a fluid motion that belied his truck driver appearance, positioning himself with tactical precision between approaching threats. Storm maintained his hold on the first biker, the German Shepherd's disciplined restraint, demonstrating years of specialized training. This wasn't a dog attacking in fear or aggression. This was a military working dog executing precise tactical responses developed through thousands of hours of combat conditioning. "Call them off!" screamed a biker, backing toward his motorcycle as Kaiser secured Viper with a trained hold. "That depends entirely on you," Jack responded, his posture and voice projecting calm command presence despite the surrounding chaos. "Weapons down, backs to the truck, hands visible." Two bikers immediately complied, the suddenness and efficiency of the K9 attack shattering their tactical confidence. Three others hesitated, hands moving toward concealed weapons in indecision. "I wouldn't," Jack advised, his tone matter-of-fact rather than threatening. "These dogs have tactical bite protocols. Right now, they're using Level 2 restraint. Level 5 is what they used on enemy combatants. You don't want to experience that." Kaiser maintained perfect discipline, holding Viper immobilized while continuously scanning for additional threats, behavior developed during hundreds of detainee operations overseas. Storm mirrored this professional restraint, his powerful jaws applying precisely enough pressure to control without causing permanent injury. "What the hell are these things?" gasped one of the compliant bikers, eyes wide as he witnessed Kaiser's methodical control techniques. 75th Ranger Regiment K9 Tactical Unit, Jack answered, moving to secure Viper's dropped weapon. "Kaiser and Storm have more combat deployments than your entire club combined." The distant sound of motorcycles grew louder, reinforcements approaching from both directions on the mountain pass. Jack's tactical assessment adjusted immediately to the changing threat picture. "Last chance," he announced to the remaining hesitant bikers. "Surrender now or face a federal response team." It was a calculated bluff. There was no federal team, at least not within immediate response range. But the confidence in Jack's delivery, combined with the shocking effectiveness of the dog's tactical intervention, created the desired psychological impact. One by one, the remaining Death Riders placed their weapons on the ground, all except one, a heavily tattooed man whose hand still hovered near his vest. "Don't," Jack warned, recognizing the telltale indicators of someone preparing to draw a concealed firearm. "Kaiser, target." The German shepherd's head snapped toward the hesitant biker, a low growl emanating from deep in his chest, the same sound that had preceded lethal engagements in combat zones. The psychological effect was immediate. The biker's hand moved slowly away from his vest. "Smart choice," Jack commented, maintaining his position of tactical advantage. "Storm secure." The second German shepherd adjusted his hold on the first biker, maintaining control while shifting to a stance that would allow immediate response to new threats if necessary. The coordinated movements between handler and dogs demonstrated years of operational experience in volatile situations. Viper, still pinned under Kaiser's controlled hold, glared up at Jack with a mixture of pain and disbelief. "You have any idea who you're dealing with?" "The Death Riders don't forget. Neither do combat veterans," Jack replied, his voice carrying the cold certainty of someone who had faced far deadlier adversaries. "Your operation ends tonight." The approaching motorcycle sound suddenly changed character. Different engines, different patterns. Headlights appeared around the bend, but not the expected Death Riders reinforcements. State police cruisers crested the hill, lights flashing, followed by more law enforcement vehicles, establishing a perimeter around the scene. "Looks like your 30 minutes just shortened considerably," Jack observed, as Viper's expression shifted from confidence to dismay. Officers deployed with tactical precision, securing the scene with professional efficiency. A plainclothes officer approached Jack, showing identification. "Lieutenant Morris, State Police Organized Crime Unit. We've been tracking the Death Riders' highway operations for 3 months. He surveyed the scene, noting the controlled K9 holds with professional appreciation. "Impressive work. Kaiser, Storm, stand down," Jack commanded. Both German shepherds immediately released their holds, moving to perfect heel positions on either side of their handler. The transition from combat engagement to disciplined compliance, demonstrating their exceptional training. The Death Riders, now being handcuffed and processed by state police, stared in disbelief at the transformation, from lethal intervention to perfect obedience in an instant. "Military working dogs?" Lieutenant Morris asked, recognizing the distinctive training indicators. 75th Ranger Regiment K9 Tactical Unit, Jack confirmed. 4 combat deployments in Afghanistan. We monitored your radio activation," Morris explained. "Been keeping protective surveillance on truckers since the robberies began. Your emergency code triggered our response protocol. As the state police secured the scene, Jack knelt between Kaiser and Storm, checking them for injuries with the same careful attention he'd given them after hundreds of combat operations. The German shepherds maintained perfect discipline despite the surrounding chaos, their focus never leaving their handler. "Good boys," he said quietly, the simple phrase carrying deeper meaning between warriors who had faced death together multiple times. Mission complete. The Death Riders' highway operation had been dismantled in minutes by what they had mistaken for simple pets. As dawn approached, the tactical reality became clear to everyone involved. The most dangerous truck on Blackthorn hadn't been carrying valuable cargo. It had been carrying two of the most effective combat K9 operators ever deployed in Afghanistan, and a handler who had never forgotten how to fight. Morning sunlight broke over Blackthorn Pass, illuminating the aftermath of the night's confrontation. State police evidence technicians documented the scene, while transport units processed the arrested Death Riders members. Jack stood beside his truck, Kaiser and Storm maintaining perfect heel position as Lieutenant Morris completed his debriefing. "The intelligence we've gathered is significant," Morris explained, reviewing notes on his tablet. "These weren't just random highway robberies. The Death Riders were establishing a systematic extortion network across 3 states, targeting specific cargo shipments for larger criminal operations." Jack nodded, watching as officers catalogued weapons and contraband seized from the bikers. His tactical assessment had been accurate. The Death Riders' operation had evolved beyond simple road taxis into organized criminal enterprise. Vipers. "Real name is Marcus Reynolds," Morris continued. "Former Army, dishonorable discharge after a failed drug smuggling attempt in Germany. Used his military experience to structure the club's tactical operations. Recognized the training patterns?" Jack acknowledged. "Containment procedures, communication protocols, coordinated movements, not standard criminal behavior." Kaiser shifted slightly, alerting Jack to an approaching officer before the man had made any noise. The German shepherd's situational awareness remained razor-sharp, even hours after the engagement. Storm mirrored the behavior from Jack's other side, both dogs maintaining protective coverage without obvious aggression. "Your dog's training is exceptional," Morris observed with professional appreciation. "Military working dogs typically lose edge in civilian environments. These two are still operating at peak tactical capability." "Never stop training," Jack explained, his hand resting lightly on Kaiser's scarred head. 3 hours daily. Combat. Scenarios, detection exercises, tactical response drills. Keeps us all sharp." The lieutenant nodded toward Jack's truck. "And the modifications, those aren't standard features on a Peterbilt." A brief smile touched Jack's otherwise serious expression. "Former Ranger with specialized equipment training and too much time between routes. Some habits don't fade." Morris didn't press further, understanding the unspoken reality of combat veterans who brought pieces of the battlefield home with them, not as psychological damage, but as practical adaptation to civilian life. Statewide, "Alert has been issued for remaining Death Riders members," he said instead. "Their operating network extended beyond what we initially suspected. Your intervention provided the breakthrough we needed to move on their entire organization." As evidence collection continued, other truckers who had been stopped nearby began approaching, drivers who had witnessed the aftermath of what would become known throughout the region as the Blackthorn incident. Their expressions showed the same stunned realization that had hit the Death Riders too late. What looked like ordinary German shepherds were actually something far more lethal. "They're saying your dogs took down 8 bikers," one trucker said, maintaining respectful distance from Kaiser and Storm. "Military dogs, right?" Jack nodded without elaborating, his natural reserve reasserting itself now that the tactical situation had resolved. Kaiser and Storm remained focused, their disciplined bearing unmistakable to anyone with military experience. 75th Ranger Regiment K9 Tactical Unit, an older trucker identified, his Vietnam-era Army hat indicating his background.
"Oh,
"Saw dogs like these in action once. Different breed, same presence. Nothing else moves like a combat dog." Lieutenant Morris returned with Jack's official statement and release forms. "You're clear to continue your route, Mr. Harmon." The prosecutor, May call you as a witness, but your written statement should cover immediate needs." As Jack prepared to depart, Morris added more quietly, "There's been a spike in organized criminal activity targeting truckers nationwide. Your successful defense might encourage others to consider similar security measures. Most truckers can't deploy military working dogs," Jack pointed out, checking Kaiser and Storm for any signs of stress or injury. The same post-mission assessment he'd performed hundreds of times in Afghanistan. "No," Morris agreed, "but they can learn to recognize threats earlier, establish communication networks, implement basic countermeasures. Perhaps you might consider sharing your expertise." The suggestion lingered as Jack completed his pre-departure truck inspection. Kaiser and Storm maintained perimeter security out of ingrained habit, their movements showing the fluid precision that had once protected ranger units in the most hostile territories on Earth. As the 18-wheeler pulled back onto the highway, Jack caught sight of the detained Death Riders being loaded into transport vehicles. Viper's expression remained fixed on the truck, specifically on Kaiser and Storm visible in the cab. The look of disbelief hadn't faded. The realization that what he had dismissed as pets had dismantled his entire operation in minutes. "Mission complete, boys," Jack said quietly as they crested Blackthorn Pass. Kaiser pressed against his side briefly, a gesture of partnership that transcended handler-dog relationship. These weren't pets, or even standard working dogs. They were combat veterans who had found purpose in continuing to protect others. Over the following weeks, the Blackthorn incident spread through trucker networks across the country. Details expanded with each retelling, some claiming a dozen bikers, others insisting the dogs had military combat armor. The core truth remained consistent. A former ranger and his 2 military working dogs had ended the Death Riders' reign of terror on the mountain pass. More importantly, truckers began implementing basic security protocols, establishing communication networks, developing awareness of suspicious patterns. A community once vulnerable began transforming into something more resilient. Jack continued his routes, Kaiser and Storm always at his side. Their training regimen never faltered. Their combat edge never dulled. The nightmares from Afghanistan came less frequently now, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of having found another way to serve. Some warriors never stop fighting, they just find different battlefields.